up? It's Jesse. I'm here at the Wolfram Tech Conference, and for those who haven't tuned in, we're just talking to developers and other interesting people using Wolfram technology in really cool ways. And I'm sitting here with Kevin. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do at Wolfram and what you're doing here at the conference specifically?
Sure. So I am a junior user interface developer. So I work in the front end team. I mostly work on dialogues. So like in the new release, I'll have the send mail dialogue is the one that I worked on.
I've used that function. I was talking with Christian about it yesterday.
Yeah.
I've used that to email some coworkers.
Good. Glad to hear it.
So it's working. It's working well.
Good. So, I mean, intense, like the dialogue is the main thing I'm doing right now, some code cleanup because I'm new, so it gets me to learn about our code base. But otherwise, I also get some other fun projects too along the way that aren't exactly just doing dialogues.
So what are you doing here at the conference? What are you...
At here, I deemed myself too junior to have a presentation, so I'm actually just mostly attending talks, talking to some of the other people who are attending, just getting their feedback on SendMail because it was presented in John Foltz's talk.
Okay.
So hopefully get some good feedback on that.
So aside from dialogue, what are the more fun things that you typically work on?
So in my vast spare time, I do dabble in video game making. Very simple things, like I've actually given other talks at like the summer school on just video game design. What's nice about the Wolfram language is you can bring in all these different aspects very quickly. Like I don't have to code in C. It's a nice high-level language, so I can just grab images off the web, because I'm not an artist. Like I've learned very much so that game design by a single person is almost insurmountable. Like props to those who can do it. And for me, it's like if I can grab a sprite off of the web, get a MIDI file, so have some background music, it's so much easier than I have to do this on my own.
So what are some of the games that you created with Wolfram language so far?
There was, the first big one I did for the summer school was Flappy Bird. I kind of resurrected that in the Wolfram language, and that actually led to a blog post that I had on a bit different version than I had originally put on my community page. But I've kind of made things more complicated. I went and actually worked on Castlevania. It was released in 1986, so it was like the 25th anniversary, something like that. I thought I would take a stab at it, and then kind of like when you're designing a house, you want all the coolest features in there, and then you realize how hard it is, so you scale back. So I wanted to do like the first, like the game, and then like, okay, maybe I'll just do the first stage. It's like, I'll just do the location outside the castle. It's like, okay, and then I'm just gonna do one enemy type. That's it. So even though I did scale back a lot of what my original grand design was, it was still a really good learning project. And I actually give it credit for me getting a job in the front end team.
Nice.
So I started out in tech support. But with these games that I developed, I showed my ability to work in the front end. And so I had this nice portfolio, and so I made some noise, and one thing led to another, so then I joined their group.
That's awesome. So Castlevania, you have a notebook here.
Yeah, I can show it off.
Cool. So what is this, what is that first section actually?
So I wanted to show, so I have a Surface Book here, which is a Microsoft device, and I've got an Xbox controller, and I just wanted to show how easy it is for the Wolfram language to connect to external devices. So in this example, I've just got a few manipulates. I don't know if I should make this bigger. So you can see that as I move the joystick, the different controller states will update, and so it's just a nice way that you can map different buttons. And so with this controller state function, and again, it works really well because the driver is already inside the laptop. And so the Wolfram language can detect the driver and just use it. So you see I'm using an Xbox 360 controller. And so even just showing a basic example of a game, actually, Jesse, I'll have you do this. So I made basically a game designer. So like when Mario Maker came out, it was really interesting to actually make side-scrolling games. And so I made a little basic thing. You'll just use the D-pad and the A button to jump. And there's a double jump. So you can actually hit A twice.
Oh, I see. Hang on.
And so the goal is to escape the maze.
Do I have a time limit?
No time limit.
Okay, let's get a running
I
start
tested
here.
it. I know I can get out.
All right, another running start over here. I'm gonna do. There we go.
Yay!
Oh my God.
That's supposed to happen.
Do you just abort the evaluation?
Because it's living in the front end, all I have to do is close the cell or delete the cell,
Oh,
and then
okay.
it'll actually stop running.
Nice.
So let's actually do some Castlevania. I'll go ahead and take over for this. Not saying that you couldn't do it. So this one I actually created. I didn't want it to start right away because it's a bit more complicated. Oh, hang on. I'll actually replay it. It's starting from an older state. There we go. So like the demo you just showed off, I did include a double jump in here, even though it's not required for this kind of game.
Is it not in the original game either?
It's not. The original game is way clunky. And so I
You
included...
died already?
I did. It's running a little fast. I included a frames per second, like global variable.
Okay.
This is very reminiscent of like old computers, which if you recall, like I grew up with a IBM 386. It had a turbo button literally on the outside of the computer tower. And all games were basically set to the CPU clock. And so if you turned on the turbo button, some games would run at ridiculous speeds. And so the front end works very similarly. I'm using dynamic behind the scenes. And so this game is running as fast as the dynamic can basically reprocess the screen. And so what this leads to is basically how fast your CPU is determines how fast this game will run.
Okay.
And so to make it a little easier for other people to pick this up, I do have this kind of global variable that you can adjust for your CPU speed.
That's nice. Where can someone, I guess, get this sort of demo? Where does it live?
This lives in two places. I have a community post. I also have a GitHub page where I store a lot of my kind of fun time projects.
Cool. So, I mean, I'm assuming you design games that you like or that you grew up playing.
It's not just a hobby, not quite a passion, but it's game design. So when you're trying to teach someone something, if you don't have their interest, it's very hard for them to learn the subject.
Right.
So if you want to get into programming, I think games are a great way to do it, even if that doesn't become your profession, because it's a way to learn how to break down a problem into smaller milestones. Your interest continues to hold because you're involved and invested in this kind of game. So it's a great starting point for anyone who's learning programming.
Nice. So, I mean, what games are next for you? Like, what do you...
So I have been working on Punch-Out!, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! For the original Nintendo. I've got the animations are the hardest. But
yeah, it's like sort of, I don't know, like, it's like cartoony almost, right? It's like...
Yeah, these 8-bit graphics, yeah. Even Mario is the ringleader, the ref in the game. But again, scaling back from my grand design, I'm only going to make one stage, but I'll maybe tweak the AI so it could be harder or easier. So you'll only fight Glass Joe, which is the first character, but he might be pretty hard.
Do you think you'll sort of make a full-blown game with Wolfram language any time in the future?
Yeah, I mean, you can consider Castlevania a full-blown game. Like, there's a lot of games that are considered simple, like even Flappy Bird, you just tap the screen to try and maximize your score. I mean, that's a complete game.
Yeah, I guess I meant like all of the levels in Castlevania and sort of like the...
That would be
the
awesome.
enemies.
But again, I have my vast spare time to deal with, which I say sarcastically. But yeah, so that's why I kind of stick with simple games. Like even Flappy Bird I made in, my first prototype was maybe only 6 hours, but I kind of take that with a grain of salt because I already knew the front end well enough to know how the pieces would fit together.
So aside from, using games as motivation for programming, what other advice do you have for people who are interested in game design? I just feel like a lot of people, it's kind of like a very hot, area that people want to move into.
I think the Unity game engine is fantastic. I haven't dabbled in it as much as I probably would, but because Wolfram language has Unity Link, you can create assets, because like I said, if you're a game designer of one, the artistry, which includes all the assets, I mean, I am just not talented in that way at all. I can sit in a dark room and code for hours, but if I can't draw to save my life, or compose write sheet music.
I'm also not musically inclined either, so I
So with Unity, you can create in Unity Link a whole bunch of assets, like geometry assets from within the Wolfram language, and then import them very easily. And then even through the Unity sort of universe, you can actually purchase pre-made assets from other people to include in your game, which is pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, do you know where you don't work on Unity Link?
No, I don't.
Okay. Does the front end team work on that, or like?
That is Charles Poe's team, and I know Alec Schettelbauer gave a talk on that.
Cool. I guess what are you most excited to see as far as either with UI dialogue or with game design? What are you most excited to see progress with the Wolfram language?
I'm really interested in either mixed reality or just full virtual reality. Seeing if we can somehow do that, because I know, crossing my fingers, that video is on the way, and if we can do that with like a live stream inside a Mathematica notebook, I mean, yeah, it's exciting.
Cool. Well, thanks for chatting with me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And stick around, and we'll have one more developer talk this afternoon. Thanks.